Hey guys, I'm Philip Molina, this is Eric Voss.
Hey guys.
And this is a breakdown of that new trailer for Doctor Strange. It's one of the million things that came out of Comic-Con that we're trying to cover as fast as we can. So we're just gonna point out some of the things that you might not have noticed. I know some things that no one noticed, and just some stuff from that new preview comic. I don't know if you guys saw it, that came out a couple weeks ago. But why don't we just get right into it?
Yeah, let's get started.
Doctor Strange, you think you know how the world works?
So this opening section gives us another introduction to Dr. Stephen Strange, and just like that first teaser that came out a few months ago, the movie looks like it's gonna stick to that Marvel origin of the character. He's this arrogant but amazing surgeon. He clearly also is real good with his hands, if you know what I mean, and by that I mean playing the piano that we're currently hearing. And he's also really super freaking rich. And then as we see, it all comes crumbling down for him in an accident. And then the voice that we hear...
You think you know how the world works?
Yes, this is the Ancient One, played by Tilda Swinton. We'll talk more about who the Ancient One is in just a second, but right now she's calling out Strange as this arrogant know-it-all that we know who he is, and of course he's played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who is perfect casting choice for Doctor Strange. We've seen him play arrogant know-it-alls in the past with Sherlock, and as Khan from the Star Trek sequel, and then as Smaug the Dragon from the Hobbit movie.
Let's keep going.
What if I told you the reality you know is one of many?
This doesn't make any sense.
Not everything does. Not everything has to.
And then we see this aftermath, and it's not the worst way to wake up to seeing Rachel McAdams as the night nurse version that is not Rosario Dawson from the Netflix shows. This is, yeah, Rachel McAdams, total hottie, but also she's Christina Palmer here, and in the comics, night nurse is associated with Doctor Strange. She's also kind of associated with a bunch of superheroes, but it seems like they're gonna focus her on just him. And look at his freaking hands, destroyed, like miserably freaking, like they got pins in them and stuff. Clearly, this is the guy who just went from the highest high to the lowest low, and he's gonna need a way to cure his hands.
Yeah, and just like he does in the comics, his journey to heal his hands takes him to the Far East, specifically Tibet and China. You see that he has his beard. This is definitely a long time has passed here. And that journey to Tibet introduces him to the Ancient One, who we mentioned before. The Ancient One to Doctor Strange is kind of this mentor figure like Yoda or Morpheus, if we're getting into Matrix parallels. The Ancient One was born 500 years ago and discovered magic at a very young age. And also the Ancient One ages very slowly, so he's super old but doesn't really look that old. And his job is to protect the world and other dimensions through the years from dark magic forces.
Yeah, and to clarify, the Ancient One is a title that one adopts now. It wasn't always that exact thing, but they fixed the whole whitewashing thing by saying that it's a title. But I'm fine going with that. That's just a title that is now on Tilda Swinton.
Yes.
Yeah. So we see in the background of these shots, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is amazing in everything he's in. He plays Baron Mordo, who, there's a long history there in the comics. We're gonna get back to that soon, actually. But then we see Stephen push through this kind of glass crystal barrier that's showing a different sort of reality. What's kind of cool is that they lifted this from that scene in Ant-Man where he kind of goes into the quantum small space, showing what it's like to cross into almost another dimension. You can see more of this actually in the title sequence with the new version of the Marvel Studios title, but they like kaleidoscoped the comics instead of showing them normally.
Through the mystic arts, we harness energy and shape reality. We travel great distances in an instant.
So in this next section, we see some of the amazing visuals of this movie. It's these Inception-style effects as we see the Ancient One reshaping this London city block. And we know it's London because you can see the crossroads here are Great Scotland Yard and Northumberland Avenue. That's within the city of London. And these trippy visuals are inspired clearly by Steve Ditko. He's the co-creator of Doctor Strange, and his artwork is amazing. It's great to see them use this in the movie. And also we see some of these complex, impossible architecture that, like Inception, was clearly inspired on the artwork of MC Escher.
And actually, yeah, Doctor Strange comics in general, they're known for these crazy artistic visuals, so they didn't only change the visual layout of comic books in general for Marvel, they're doing that for the movies now too, not just for the look of where they are, but potentially the way that Marvel wants to portray other dimensions and realities.
And also real quick, we see why Doctor Strange is such a cool game changer to bring into the MCU is that he uses magic and mystical arts. That's not something we've seen really any other Marvel movie character use before. We've seen different parts of the cosmos and different kinds of science fiction, but not magic, so it's cool to see that join the Marvel universe.
So then we hop over through a freaking portal to the Himalayas, I think, and what's really interesting here is that it looks like a lot of the training is gonna go down in these, mountains of Tibet or whatever. That's so similar to what happened with Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins, where he goes to actually the same part of the world to go train with Ra's al Ghul. Just another one of these kind of Christopher Nolan connections. It's similar to the like prism angular images here, obviously the like upside down city bending visuals of Inception, and yeah, Batman Begins' is training sequence, but honestly, who cares, because I love Nolan movies, so it's great.
Let's move on.
How do I get from here to there?
How did you become a doctor?
Study and practice, years of it.
So here we see the scarred hands of Dr. Stephen Strange as he's opening this book. And what book is this? We're pretty sure that this is the Book of Vishanti. And in the Doctor Strange comics, the Book of Vishanti contains all of the positive spells and the counter spells of the mystical arts that he's learning.
It's a spell book, and right away you can tell that they're like sticking pretty close to the visuals of the comics with the way that he like harnesses the magical energy and goes over his arm and whatnot. If you look closely though, as that prism that shows up starts to go away, it looks like some people or some guards or something might be like chasing after him, like, hey, you there, so you're not supposed to be touching our book of spells. So this is probably one of these things where like a person that's like too smart for their own good is just like trying to get ahead of their training, and then they find themselves in a bad situation, but also adventure. Let's keep going.
There's a strength to him.
But is he ready?
Be careful which path you travel down, Strange. Stronger men than you have lost their way. I am death and pain.
Okay, so now we see Chiwetel as Baron Mordo, like we talked about earlier, and he's supposed to be a fellow student, but here he kind of looks like he's, owning the place. It's kind of like, how you have a Taekwondo master, and then the, like, slightly younger, better-looking version of him that, like, is kind of in charge of the day-to-day. That seems like what Mordo's doing here. He's kind of a disciple of the Ancient One, and in the comics, here's a big deal. It's pretty well known, so I wouldn't call this a spoiler, but if you're like, no, nothing at all, I don't want to know anything, then jump to this time. But Baron Mordo, I'm speaking slowly on purpose, is eventually going to turn against Doctor Strange. It just, based on this trailer, doesn't seem like it happens in this movie. Again, I'm gonna say it's really well known in the comics, he's one of the villains, but it's pretty interesting if this ends up having not only an arc for Benedict Cumberbatch's Stephen Strange, but also for Baron Mordo turning from the light side to the dark.
And then we see Doctor Strange looking at his famous cloak of levitation, and it's in this case like it's on display at Comic-Con or something. This is the cloak that allows him to fly. He can kind of direct it like it's a magic carpet from Aladdin. All of this looks like it's in the Sanctum Santorum. That's Doctor Strange's home mansion in the comics. It magically expands on the inside. It's basically his base of operations where he stores all of his magical artifacts.
Yeah, I'll say it doesn't seem like immediately at this moment he like owns this place. Maybe it'll be bequeathed to him by the end of the movie. Don't laugh, that's a funny word. And then actually in the comics, a lot of the Defenders end up working out of that place at times. I feel like that's not gonna happen because they don't love to cross the TV shows and movies over.
And then of course we get this obligatory MCU hero shirtless shot as Doctor Strange is shaving his facial hair into an interesting goatee, like another famous Marvel arrogant asshole who had a severe life-threatening injury and then had to find his soul through the end of the film.
And powers. Then we see these three amazing windows that could just be like three different HD screens showing different environments, but they're probably portals themselves to a forest, ocean, and mountains. And when he opens that window and we see him looking over the ocean, that's probably our best shot of the Eye of Agamotto hanging there right over his chest. So the Eye of Agamotto is a big deal. This whole prequel comic that they put out is all about taking that away from someone who's not worthy of it and giving it to someone who is worthy. They don't finish it there, but obviously he's the one that ends up with it. It's the most powerful object that Doctor Strange really has right now. It's one of these eyes that was created by this Vishanti guy. His name's Agamotto, obviously. It can give you telepathic powers, it can rewind and manipulate reality, and it can create doorways also through time and space. So there's a moment later that comes up that I think is gonna legitimize one claim that a lot of people are making, that it could be one of the sought after Infinity Stones. I'll bring it up when we get to it, but yeah, I'm starting to feel like this could be the time stone that Thanos is desperately after.
And when they say
Stronger men than you have lost their way.
they're clearly referring to this guy. This is Mads Mikkelsen's character. We were wondering what villain he would be playing. Some thought it would be Dormammu, that's Stephen Strange's recurring major villain from the comics. But the prequel comic that we were talking about said that this guy is going to be, we think his name is Caecilius. Sorry if I'm not saying that right. He's a good guy in the prequel comic that we saw, but it's hinted that he's gonna turn bad. And in earlier Doctor Strange comics, Caecilius is a slightly more obscure villain. He's actually a disciple of Baron Mordo. After Mordo turns bad, he uses the powers of Dormammu through Caecilius to attack Doctor Strange.
Either way, whatever it is, he's an amazing actor, and I love when this guy plays a bad guy. And the character looks great, except I can't look at his eyes. It creeps me out so much. The like area around it is like blood or guts or muscle or pizza paste. I hate it. Anyway, they're clearly having some major battle in some Asian city, and it's totally wrecked. So there probably is going to be an intense battle sequence there. And check out that window behind him. It looks like the Eye of Agamotto symbol that they use in the Sanctum. So based on that and a few other shots that we're going to see in a bit, I feel like he's actually going to attack the Sanctum itself. I think the Sanctum, ironically, because of what that word means, is not a safe place for him to go to, but more on that later.
And before we move on, we get the shot of the night nurse. It looks like she's trying to revive Stephen Strange, but it's after he's already become a sorcerer. He's wearing his new clothes. So I feel like some stuff's gonna be going down in New York.
Also, sparks are flying because they love each other.
You'll die protecting this world.
I can't do this.
There is no other way.
So this section here is one of my favorites, actually. It's showing that, like, not only is the world, you know, at risk once again, New York streets are actually, like, bending as this portal opens. If you look closely, you can see that Stephen Strange and Mordo are running toward that as Mads Mikkelsen's character is chasing them. Right now, they're actually running toward the Empire State Building. I think there's gonna be a huge chase sequence in New York, but also I actually have a feeling it's gonna take place all around the world, maybe at the same time, which is an amazing idea and totally takes advantage of what happens when you have a bunch of people that can use all kinds of magic in a fight. I feel like that's one of these things that's just gonna make this movie stand apart.
Then we see Doctor Strange creating this cool cat's cradle thing with magic beams between his hands. That could be the Crimson Bands of Satorak from the comics.
Just not Crimson.
Not Crimson, Golden Bands, maybe. Even if it's not, it could be him creating this fire whip thing. And I'm wondering if that's part of his yellow sash. If you read the comics, you know that his sash can actually extend to 10 times its normal length, and he kind of uses it to fight and lasso people. Or it could just be him using magic to create this awesome whip thing that he uses to take people down.
And if you look around right now, I mean, Mads is right there. This is that moment I was talking about, that it feels like the Sanctum might be under attack at some point. And then we cut to a different fight, and it's maybe a fight in a different location with that block of an Asian city. But notice here, watch them fighting. They're fighting totally normally, but everything around them, that destruction, it's going in reverse. The wreckage is getting unwrecked. So this is what makes me think we might have the time gem on our hands, or time stone in the Marvel movies. Also, they might not even be fighting in that same location, because if you look at their feet, like the ground around them, it kind of looks like it's not the road. So this could be one of these like trippy things where they're fighting in some sort of like space that is traveling through dimensions and spaces all around the world. Again, that'd be so cool. You guys better do that in the movie because I've hyped it up so much now. Let's keep going though.
I've spent so many years peering through time,
looking for you.
Here we're seeing more of this reality-bending New York chase sequence, and we're seeing more cool angles of just the skyline, like in Inception, folding on top of itself, forming, in this shot, a donut hole in the middle of the city. And if you look closely, you can see Avengers Tower right in the middle there.
Also, how nice of the Ancient One to say that she's been looking for this guy through time. That means that he could be the one, the Neo of the Marvel Universe. But really, he's stepping up into his role that he eventually gets in the comics anyway, of Sorcerer Supreme, the primary defender of Earth from Dark Magic. Baron Mordo kind of feels like he should get the job, so I wouldn't be surprised if that plays a role in what flips him to the dark side. And also, I'll just say real quick, Strange's face here in this badass cape whip shot is bloodied, so I feel like maybe that's the cap of the attack on the Sanctum earlier. Now he's like, you know what? I'm taking this cape. I'm gonna go through this Comic-Con case and take it for myself. And then he goes to save the world. But let's wrap this thing up.
What's this, my mantra?
It's the Wi-Fi password. We're not savages.
Okay, so the this whole Wi-Fi joke with the word Shambhala, I think that's a reference to the Doctor Strange graphic novel Into Shambhala.
I think it's definitely a reference to
I
the
think, my
to that
theory,
graphic novel.
out on a limb.
What's it about?
That's when Doctor Strange visits the home of the Ancient One in the Himalayas, and he finds this ancient artifact that the Ancient One left for him, and it ends up being a communication device with the Lords of Shambhala. They're from a higher reality that give Doctor Strange an opportunity to help humanity reach another golden age. So I feel like it being the Wi-Fi password, and Mordo saying, hey, we're not savages, he's saying that Shambhala is how humans access the internet, and it's their version of the higher form of reality.
Okay, but the final shot that's pretty intense. Doctor Strange is taking obviously some sort of massive attack, and he's doing that thing where he's like standing up against it and he's slowly starting to rise. But those shield kind of shapes, he's got one behind him, but also I think there's one in front of him. That could be a magical shield that obviously he's just made right in that moment. It could also be, though, a physical embodiment of the invisible shield of everlasting enchantment. Essentially, it's a really long, fancy way to say when you're magical, you got like a layer of shield, like cling wrap all over you. That could be the Marvel movies interpretation of that, where he's just got like little shields he can pop out of in magical forms. But that's it. That's the entirety of this trailer. I'm super hyped for this movie. I'm a huge Benedict Cumberbatch fan. That's, I think, 99,000% why I'm gonna see this movie. But also, I mean, there's a bunch of great actors in it. I'm wondering what's your favorite thing to look forward to about this movie? Is it just the inclusion of magic? Is it just the Cumberbatch? Because it's probably that. What's your favorite thing?
For me, it's gonna be all the visual effects. I love how this movie looks. I was worried if they were gonna adapt a Doctor Strange comic into a movie that they wouldn't get the visuals just right, but this is exactly how I'd want this movie to look. It looks amazing.
Plus, you love goatees.
Can't get enough.
Alright, so thank you so much for watching. If you want to support us in doing these breakdowns and tackling way more topics like we have been lately, actually, then hit us up on Patreon. That's making a huge difference. It's letting us get videos out faster, edited faster, shot faster, more topics. We're actually getting a tiny little office space somewhere. Oh, look at us. So if you want to be one of the people that's helping us out that way, it's patreon.com/newrockstars. If you want to just help us out other ways, you can share this video and share all of our videos and subscribe to this channel. If you want to hit me up for just simple little chatter, it's twitter.com/FIMO.
You can hit me up on Twitter at EAVoss. And you can also follow New Rockstars on Twitter at New Rockstars for information about when our videos are going to be coming out.
That's where that information goes, when the videos are coming out. It's at New Rockstars. That said, I think we're good to go, right?
Yeah. All right, thanks guys. Bye.
Bye.